It's time for the Rip City Drive, brought to you by Lazy Boy. What's your strategy for comfort? Featuring the crazy and often irrational longtime Portland radio vet, Chad Dewing.
Lamar takes the snap, blitz pressure coming. Jackson fires, end zone. Touchdown, Mark Andrews.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cool opportunity for them, but I think it's another football game. You know, it was a great opportunity for us to go out there and play on Monday Night Football, and, you want to be able to play in these games in November and December, and, it didn't go our way, unfortunately.
I can't lose to my little brother, and that's what I believe going into that game. He was thinking a lot, and then Jim on the other side, I believe he was like, I got to beat my big brother.
I know you said you believed and you did go small a lot tonight. Was it an example of something that you would like to have seen, or did you just kind of have to do something like that tonight?
Brooke, we had no choice.
Yeah, correct. Okay.
We had no choice. We got some. Our big guys, our centers, and everybody was kind of out, so we really had no choice. Even when our big guys are around, I'm confident in going that way, but just had no choice tonight.
Strap in. The Rip City Drive with Chad Dewing starts now.
All right, what's up, my friends? Rip City Drive with Chad Dewing. Hope you're enjoying your Tuesday afternoon. It's a little bit chilly outside. I noticed that this morning. I was like, what's going on? We are entering the dark days of wintertime here in the Northwest, which means more rain and more clouds and more cold weather. But it's all good, man. The sports scene right now is awesome. So many great things to talk about, especially with college football. We have a new batch of college football playoff rankings that will come out at 5 o'clock today. And a lot of chaos over the past couple of weekends, which is awesome. And we have more big games this weekend. So I'm loving everything about what's going on right now in college football. Oregon remains the only unbeaten team in the FBS as they prepare to host Washington. So Alex Brink is going to join us here in 20 minutes. Former Coug, now with E4 Sports, our college football and NFL insider. And we'll get his insight on a variety of different things around the playoff. How many teams is the SEC going to get in? And I've got more on that in just a moment. Also, today is a Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday. And I've got not one, but two pairs for the Dallas Mavericks who are going to be in town on Sunday. So 2 pairs of tickets for the Mavs. Get a chance to see Luka and Kyrie take on the Portland Trailblazers. And I've got a quick update on the Trailblazers right now who are experiencing some injury issues. It's a problem. So we've got more injury issues. DeAndre Ayton with the right index finger contusion. Scoot Henderson with a back strain. Chris Murray with a bruised sternum. They're all questionable for the game tomorrow. Jeremy Grant with the left knee sprain is doubtful. Donovan Clingan is going to be reevaluated in 2 weeks. He's got a grade 2 MCL sprain. And right now, Robert Williams is in concussion protocol. Matisse Thybulle is going to be out an additional 3 to 6 weeks with a grade 2 right ankle sprain. So multiple injury issues for the Trailblazers, who will finish up the 5-game road trip in Indiana tomorrow. And then they're back home for a game on Friday against Utah, and then they play the Mavericks on Sunday. So tough injury news for the Trailblazers, and unfortunate because one of the most important things this year is to have guys on the court so they can continue to get evaluation, data on who's going to be the core or a part of the core moving forward, what they think about some of the different lineup combinations, all of it. So issues right now for Portland. Coming up at 4:20, we'll get the latest from Sean Highkin on the Trailblazers. And then Holton on Hoops, Michael Holton will join us in studio at 5:20 to discuss a variety of different things. So Alex Brink in 15 minutes, Sean Highkin at 4:20, and then Michael Holton on Hoops in studio at 5:20. If you want to hit me up, you can find me on social media, Chad Dewing or at Chad in Rip City. You can reach out and jump on the show, 503-248-0620. And if I don't talk to you tomorrow, happy Thanksgiving to each and every one of you. I hope you enjoy the holiday week. I know my daughter is because they have the entire week off from school. So I got home late last night after the Blazer game, and I was running her and a friend down to Taco Bell. They wanted to make a border run, so we hit Taco Bell, and so she's enjoying her time off. And I would imagine you other parents out there with kids who have the entire week off, they too are enjoying their free time. And it reminds me of how great life was, and I didn't take time to respect it when I was younger. Plenty of time, no responsibility, and you're just having a good time with your friends. I mean, that's a good way to roll. But I didn't respect it enough because I was in such a hurry to grow up. It's like, what's going on? All right, 5 o'clock ESPN today. We'll get a new batch of college football playoff rankings, and I can't wait to see what happens because of all the chaos. Here's what I think is going to happen by the time we're done with the championship games next weekend. I think we have a pretty good idea of what the 12 is looking like right now. So if I have to project who I think the 12 teams in the playoff are going to be, I think Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, and Indiana are virtual locks for the college football playoff. I think Ohio State and Oregon are 100% locks, regardless of what happens this weekend or in the Big Ten title game. Penn State and Indiana need to win this weekend to secure their spots, but the Nittany Lions host Maryland, and Indiana will host Purdue, so they're guaranteed victories, essentially. So 4 teams from the Big Ten: Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, and Indiana. I don't think Penn State or Indiana, based on resume, are playoff worthy, but based on the chaos that's took place in the SEC, with both Alabama and Ole Miss getting 3 losses, they're in. Those teams are in. I just look at Penn State. Who have they beaten? What's their resume? And what about Indiana? They've steamrolled a bunch of bums in the Big Ten, and then they got their ass whooped by Ohio State. No disrespect to Indiana and the great job that Coach Cignetti has done, but, I mean, let's be real. Their resume isn't exactly what you would call stellar. Now, unless there is more chaos this weekend, the SEC will get 3 teams in: Georgia, Tennessee, and either Texas A&M or Texas. I think Bama and Ole Miss played their way out this past weekend. With Bama's loss to Oklahoma, they got just curb stomped 24-3, and Ole Miss losing to Florida. Both teams now have 3 losses. I think they're out. It's a crazy world we live in, but I think Ole Miss and Bama are done. I think the ACC will get 2 teams in. Those 2 teams are likely Miami and SMU. I think Clemson, because they're going to have a hard time making the title game, they play South Carolina this weekend. If they win that game, that's a quality victory. But I don't see how Clemson gets into the playoff without a trip to the ACC title game. So I think they're out, and I think it's going to be Miami and SMU. Notre Dame, provided they beat USC, is going to get in. Now, there are teams in the SEC who are going to be pulling hard for USC this weekend, but Notre Dame gets in provided they beat USC. And based on what I've seen this year, I have no reason to believe they won't beat USC. We know what the Trojans are: fraudulent, soft, and their head coach right now is struggling. Boise State is in provided they win out. And that's not a guarantee based on how they played against Wyoming. And also, they've got to likely face UNLV in their conference title game. But I would expect Boise State to find a way to navigate that, and then they're in. Now, you could look at Boise State's resume and ask the same question about Boise that you would Indiana or Penn State. What's their resume? But based on how the playoff is set up, and they're going to take the top 5 conference champions, they're going to be one of those teams. The top 5 ranked conference champions. Boise is, provided they take care of business, will be in. And then the Big 12 will get 1 team in. Hopefully it's ASU. That's who I'm pulling for. If ASU beats Arizona this Saturday and Iowa State beats Kansas State, those 2 teams will meet in the title game. If ASU beats Arizona and Iowa State loses to K-State, we'll see a rematch of what we saw on Saturday. ASU and BYU in the Big 12 title game next Saturday down in Dallas. So to summarize, I think the Big 10 gets 4 teams in: Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, and Indiana. The SEC with 3 teams: Georgia, Tennessee, and either Texas A&M or Texas. And I've mentioned this before with Texas. Their resume is hot garbage. Their only quality win was at Vandy, who's like 6-5. And they beat Oklahoma, but Oklahoma's garbage this year. So Texas' resume, not good. And yet they're ranked 7 spots ahead of Georgia, who went into Texas and beat them by 15 points, 30-15. So I'm not impressed with Texas' resume, but if they handle their business, they're in. So 4 teams from the Big 10, 3 teams from the SEC, 1 team from the Big 12. Notre Dame is an independent. 2 teams from the ACC. My guess would be Miami and SMU, and then Boise State. And that is your field of 12. 4, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12. Yep, those are your 12 teams. And then we'll see how things play out from there. My guess would be that if Arizona State were to beat Arizona and then beat Iowa State or BYU in the Big 12 title game, they will get the 4th seed in the playoff and get a bye week. And then Boise State would have to play in the opening round. That's how I think that's going to play out. But Boise State's in a position where they could very well wind up with a bye, which is crazy. Absolutely crazy. Now, Oregon, the only unbeaten team remaining in the FBS, which is pretty sweet, they're getting ready for a showdown with Washington. Now, Coach Lanning talked about the game this week, and he was asked if the 3 straight losses to Washington, if that's going to be used as motivation. Here's what he had to say.
Again, I think I've said it several times. Motivation's overrated, right? Like, our guys have to want to go out there and execute at a really high level. You know, since the beginning of the season, we talked about playing our best football at the end of November. Well, we're there, right? So this is our opportunity to go play our best football against a good team.
Now, one thing I think that's really impressive for Oregon is that their first bye week of the season, it came after their non-conference schedule. And then they played 8 consecutive weeks in conference, and they won every game. That's a long time to go, week to week to week, without a break. And finally, after they completed that game in Wisconsin, they enter a bye week and get a chance to get some rest before they take on Washington. They're the only team that went 8 straight weeks without a bye. And they came out of it unscathed, which is impressive. So if you're wondering why they looked a little bit sluggish against Wisconsin, well, it's a tough place to play. Wisconsin's not a bum, and Oregon was fatigued. So they'll be 100% ready for Washington, but he was asked about the bye week and how they utilize their time. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, first we just started by looking at ourselves, right? Evaluating where the areas that we can improve, what are our strengths, finding ways to be able to lean into those strengths, and then, getting our legs back, getting ourselves back, attacking the weight room. We saw great jumps in our numbers, in the weight room this past week, whether it's our, squat power numbers or just our speeds on the field. So I think that those are all positives. We're going to go in this game, playing really fresh at the end.
Big respect to Lanning and his staff. He's showing improvement for being a game day coach, making decisions between the lines during the course of play, and just the overall tinkering with the roster throughout the course of practice during the season and the way they've improved in all these different areas, penalties, offensive line, run blocking, pass blocking, defense, the whole shebang, man. They've been great. And they've got a great chance to hammer Washington and finish off the season unbeaten and get ready for that rematch against Ohio State in the Big Ten title game. As I've said before, going undefeated is great, but now with the playoff expansion, who gives a rip? You've got to win the conference title game and get that bye week. I think that's critical to have a good pathway for a championship, although being the number 5 seed wouldn't be the end of the world because it might be an easier path. But I'm all about rest and making sure your guys are healthy. All right, we'll come back. Alex Brink, former Coug, our college football and NFL insider, will join us, and we'll focus in on the playoffs. We'll talk to him about Oregon State's win over Washington State, and we'll get his take on Kenny Dillingham and the work he's done at Arizona State. That's coming up next on the Rip City Drive with Chad Doing. All right, Rip City Drive with Chad doing. We're getting ready for Thanksgiving, and so Alex Brink was kind enough to join us earlier in the week because it's going to be a crazy finish to the week. Our college football and NFL insider, former Coug, and now with E4 Sports, Alex Brink is with us. And Alex, great game down in Corvallis. Surprising result with the Beavers getting the win. What was really the big issue in your mind with Washington State the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, obviously the defense isn't playing great. I mean, I think in the end, for Washington State, the New Mexico was not a great matchup. I mean, their offense and Devin Dampier, their quarterback, were really good. And the dual threat capabilities really hurt them. Against Oregon State, I would argue that, with Ben Gulbranson behind center, the Oregon State Beavers are a better football team than what you've seen most of the year. And he came out and played lights out, and they had a good balanced attack. I think Washington State, again, defensively got exposed in some matchups. Both of the last couple of weeks, the Washington State offense has played pretty well, scoring 30-plus points, per 35-plus points, in those matchups, which you think would be opportunities to win. The reality is, a couple of timely turnovers or untimely, I guess, for Washington State were the difference against Oregon State, obviously. But, I think the expectation that the offense has to play perfect is a little bit of a challenge because the defense hasn't been playing great.
Alex, I'm a big fan of Jake Dickert. I know you are. He's done a heck of a job with the program this year, and I respect him a great deal. What's your guess or your best guess on the future of Jake Dickert?
Well, Coach Diggert's going to have his opportunities somewhere along the line. It's hard for me to say when that is because, there was some rumors last year that, he may be in the mix, but for some big jobs. But at the same time, it's been interesting. You haven't seen turnover at kind of the major P4 level, so to speak, in coaches because I think schools are waiting to see how things are going to shake out with all the player compensation. They can't afford some of these buyouts that some of these guys have, right? So, typically in the cycle, you would have already started, there have already been guys that have been fired. You already hear about it, but so far, there really hasn't been. I don't think there's been any to date. And so, I think for Jake Dickert, again, he's done a fantastic job at Washington State. He's young. But I think there's a chance that, especially with these most recent losses, there's a chance that maybe he stays another cycle or two at Washington State. But, again, if he does get an opportunity, and this is coming from a former player and an alum, I wish him the best because he's done a lot for Washington State football.
All right, Arizona State did it again. They got the win, 4 straight victories. They're now 9-2. They control their destiny for the Big 12 title game in a wild finish against BYU. They finish undefeated at home for the first time in 20 years. What was your reaction to the scene, the game, and another victory for Kenny Dillingham?
It's so cool. I mean, again, I've known Kenny Dillingham since he was at Oregon. We take kids from our E4 football 7-on-7 program down to Arizona State every year. We've got a couple kids on the team, Jaden Fortier, former Tualatin tight end, and obviously Sam Levitt, the starting quarterback. So, really tied to that program. Marcus Arroyo, the offensive coordinator, and Brian Ward, the defense coordinator at Washington State. So tons of connections, and it's just so cool to see what they've built in such a short time in a really challenging situation. Look, Arizona State's not a super easy place to build a program and win at. Also, you layer on the sanctions from the previous coaching regime. I mean, that's a real challenge. And so Kenny Dillingham deserves a ton of credit for what he's done, getting the buy-in and ultimately getting the production on the field.
Yeah, it's impressive. I want to ask you about this because they got their rivalry game coming up with Arizona this Saturday. They need to win to make the Big 12 championship game. How did you prepare for the UW game every year? Are rivalry games truly different, Alex, or is it just another game on the schedule?
Look, in my opinion, they are different, and you should always treat them as such. And it's not that you need to make too much of them, but our coaches at Washington State used to have, former players come in and alums come and talk about the game. They used to show clips of old games and what it looked like and really impress upon, the team, what it means to win your rivalry game. And I think, so to me, I always took it very seriously. Look, I grew up in Eugene. I grew up in the Civil War. Like, I know what a long-standing rivalry looks like, and when they have the geographic components and they have, the idea of kind of the haves and have-nots and all these different things, I think it's really cool, and I think it's important as a player that you buy into that.
Yeah, and I think what Dillingham's going to do, he's got a player coming in this week. He didn't name the guy because he didn't want to out him if he can't make it, but he's got an ex-player coming in. And then he said moving forward, they're going to bring guys in during the course of the offseason to talk about it so it's not the week of the game. But I like that, especially in today's college football where you have so many players changing the rosters. So you get new guys coming in that may not have any connection to the state, and therefore you give them at least some basis for what the game's about. That's not a bad idea.
Totally agree. And having the players come in, I think is a really cool piece because, those former players can express, right? It's like when you have a college player talk about his time in high school, right? In high school football, they all say that Friday Night Lights is the best thing they ever experienced, right? And so sometimes as a kid, you don't recognize that. Same as a college player, you're not thinking about what that means. Whereas a former player who's been through it could say, guys, like these rivalry games, the passion, the pageantry, the way the fans approach it, and if you go out and win it, the way you etch your name in history means more than anything.
All right, Alex, I want to play a clip for you from Kenny Dillingham after the win against BYU, and he was encouraging people to buy tickets and to donate to their NIL collective, because they need to keep their players, and he was talking about his guys being underpaid, but here's a 34-year-old head coach embracing the way the game is. Take a listen to this.
So buy your season tickets. Let's make that every single week of next year. Because why would you not want to be in that environment? That was one of the most fun places to be in college football. Why would you not want to do that every Saturday? All it is the fan base saying this is what we choose to do. So buy your tickets, donate to keep our team, right? And let's repeat next year, and let's try to run it back at home. Thank y'all. Go Devils. Activate the Valley, baby.
That's a head coach right there, Alex.
It's and look, again, this and Kenny Dillingham's got a ton of energy, super passionate. He's obviously an Arizona State alum, so he's really into that side of it. But he's dead right in the way he's talking to the fan base and talking to the public, about what it takes. And look, I'm experiencing this with what Washington State is going through and has gone through the last 18 or 24 months, and then you kind of see it really under a magnifying glass when the team's winning and then they lose a couple games. People on the outside of these programs, right, they have high expectations and they want so bad for their teams to compete. The formula is really simple. And Coach Gillingham's right. People need to buy tickets and go to games and not sit on their couch at home. And they need to donate to whatever facility, they want to be able to get the players in the program in a place that they can compete at a high level in the current state of college football. And for a lot of fans, that's hard to hear because, they want to sit at home and watch the game on TV and they want the players to want to play, for their school, for the love of the game. But that's not the reality. And if you're not going to participate in that side of it, then you can't have expectations of a championship program because it won't happen consistently. It'll happen occasionally, right? Like you found this year at Arizona State, right? And Washington State found for part of the year here. But it takes consistent investment and consistent buy-in if you're going to compete at the highest level. And I think that's what Kenny Dillingham's trying to get at.
We're talking with Alex Brink, our college football and NFL insider, former Coug with E4 Sports. All right, after the chaos on Saturday, both Ole Miss, they fall to Florida. Alabama gets hammered by Oklahoma. It sure looks like the SEC is only going to get 3 teams in with Georgia, Tennessee, and either Texas or Texas A&M. Does that sound about right to you?
That sounds right. I mean, like you said, the chaos, they went from, having, 4 or 5 with a chance to, like you said, probably 3. And I think the wild card Texas A&M, they could really throw a wrench in things. The thing I will say that gets kind of funky is, Texas A&M beats Texas. Obviously, Texas's strength of schedule really isn't all that good. They're kind of involved based on just their record. And so I think that definitely knocks them out.
Yeah, no question about it. I want to ask you this. I think both teams are going to get in, Penn State and Indiana. But when I watch them play, Alex, I don't see anything that really jumps out as extraordinary, and neither one of them have a great resume. But what are your thoughts on Penn State and Indiana? Are they playoff worthy?
Look, I subscribe to the records, right? And I think I said this before is, I don't love the idea of a 3-loss team getting into a 12-team playoff just because we think they look better than somebody else. Like in the end, you got to go win football games. I feel the same way about an 11-1 team that maybe doesn't look quite right or hasn't played quite the same group. You can only play the teams that are in front of you, right? And if you look at the Indiana game against Ohio State and just say, look, Ohio State's better than Indiana, Indiana shouldn't be in the playoff, my argument would be, well, what if Indiana gets another crack at Ohio State? They might beat them. Like, it might happen because that's the nature of football. And so, again, I think you can only go with the information you have on hand. I don't think, kind of saying that, well, they didn't pass the eye test that day. If they won 11 of their, if they're 11-1 and they've played it big, they're ranked appropriately, they've played in a league where that matters, then, I think they deserve to get in.
You know, Alex, I think Kalen DeBoer is a great coach. He's proven that. Assuming he's given the time, do you think he's going to figure things out at Bama?
Well, I think it's only going to get harder because the seat's only going to get warmer, and then there's only going to be more scrutiny, down there. And I think also, again, like in this age of college football, there's real parity, right? That's one thing that people hopefully are starting to recognize with NIL and the transfer portal is it has created parity, right? It has elevated some programs that were kind of in the upper middle tier up a little higher, right? And it's taken down some programs like Alabama that hoarded talent and probably paid players, but behind the scenes when nobody else could. And that has leveled that playing field out. And unfortunately, Coach DeBoer's kind of walked into that. And it doesn't get easier because when you're losing, the vultures start coming, right? And the Georgias of the world are plucking your players. The Oregons of the world are plucking your players, and so on and so forth. And it gets harder to recruit the top tier talent you want at Alabama, and you need to compete at the highest level.
All right. Did you get a chance, or let me ask you this, as an ex-Coug, because I'm always curious how you watch the games. Like, what are you rooting for with this playoff expansion? Do you have certain players you're connected to, like quarterbacks you've worked with at Elite 11 that you're pulling for? Do you have certain programs that you have interest in? Like, how do you view it as a fan?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me as a fan, it's a lot around the athletes, right? I've seen a lot of the athletes, whether it's, locally with a guy like Sam Levitt at Arizona State, whether it's, seeing guys like Quinn Ewers through Elite 11 in Texas. I think that's where it leans to. And then also probably my West Coast bias, frankly. Like, obviously I'm tied to Oregon, being a Eugene kid, love the Boise State story. In general, I think a 12-team playoff or an expanded playoff has been a long time coming. And I'm excited for the chaos of, some of these teams that, maybe are considered, these group of 5 teams or some teams that have been on the outside looking in. Can they go in and make some noise? Because we know that any given Saturday, you have a chance to win a football game. And so I think that part of it's really exciting for me. So I'm kind of excited for the teams that have been on the outside in the past getting a chance to make a run at this thing.
Oh, by the way, speaking of Sam Levitt, and I love watching him play football. I'm a big fan of his. Of all freshmen, either true or redshirt, with 300 or more snaps, he's the highest rated freshman in college football on either side of the ball. That's impressive to me.
Sounds about right. I'm not surprised by any means based on his talent and his preparation.
Alex, he can move. I mean, he's got the live arm. He's smart. According to coaches, his study habits are pure. Like they found something there. Like he's going to get better. He looks like he could develop into a pro type prospect.
Yeah, I think very much so. And he fits, the mold. The mold of kind of NFL players nowadays where, the mobility is really important. He's miles ahead of the game from a knowledge standpoint, which is going to really help him. And then, fundamentally, he's really sound. So, yeah, to your point about them kind of finding it. And, I think it's also a great fit for him. I think, he left Michigan State and found a home with Kenny Dillingham and Marcus Arroyo. And I think that plays into, a player's confidence big time, is having people around you that believe in you.
No question. Did you get a chance to work with Bo Nix in the Elite 11 before he went to college?
I did, yeah. He was one of the guys, when he came out of that class, I think it was Spencer Rattler's class, I could be mistaken, but, felt really strongly that Bo Nix would be, be a good college football player, but potentially be a pro.
Well, what do you think about his development so far from week 1 to week 12 in his rookie season?
I think he's the beneficiary, and this is an interesting, kind of thing to think about, Chad, is, we're starting to see now as kind of the sample sizes come out of, quarterbacks that have played more football in college, I think are finding more success in the NFL. And I know that sounds like the most obvious statement in the world, but, guys like Anthony Richardson are getting drafted really high with very little experience and having a hard time at the next level. And I think it has a lot to do with, again, the number of snaps they have at the collegiate level and the good and bad they go through. And I think Bo Nix is a great example of everything about that matters. Like, he played a lot. He went through some ups and downs. He found success at the end. And now he gets the NFL. And it doesn't go great early on, right? It wasn't a great start. But he never hung his head. He kept working. He kept battling. And now you've seen him develop into, a really good young rookie that I think he's building in the playbook, and he's getting better. They're asking more of him, and it's not too much. He's continuing to execute.
I got one more question for you. Who would you not want to face in the AFC right now? Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, or Patrick Mahomes? Today, who do you think is the hardest one to prepare for of those three?
Is there a D? Is there anybody else?
Dude, I'm so impressed with all of those guys.
All of them. I mean, again, like Lamar is the hardest to prepare for because he can just take you off. I mean, they all can. They all have the ability to break a game with their legs. But like Lamar's another level with it, right? And I think that part of it, becomes a real issue in like certain downs in the red zone, places like that. Josh Allen to some degree can also, but to me, I think it's Lamar Jackson.
All right, Alex, E4 Sports, you guys are doing great things. I want to ask you about Headquarters Physical Therapy. It's the PT for the pros. And it's so important because you and I know this as we get older, and you and I like to be active, that you got to keep your body right to be able to move. And I want people to know that they can have access to the best, the people that work with the pros, to get their body right.
Yeah, you got to check out headquarterspt.com. I mean, this is a team of physical therapists that, they work with, like you said, NFL-level athletes, NHL-level hockey players, baseball players, all the above. But then at the same time, they're seeing, folks like you and me that just want to, be healthy, want to, maybe recover from an injury or a surgery, something like that, and want to be able to live that healthy lifestyle. And so the great thing about HQPT is that you're seeing the physical therapist for a one-on-one, 1 hour personal session. They're creating a custom plan for your recovery or your continued wellness. They're bringing in all the newest data, all the newest, everything up to speed on what you need to continue to stay healthy and get better. So check out headquarterspt.com. You can get online and book a consultation and come in. Locations in Beaverton, Milwaukee, out in Bend, and down in Tualatin also.
Well, Alex, I appreciate you, my friend. I love talking ball with you. Have a great Thanksgiving. Enjoy the week. Have fun with the Wyoming game, and we'll talk next week.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
All right, love Alex. Love talking ball with Alex. He's my guy. He is my guy, doing a lot of different things. The cool part about Alex is that he works with a lot of these quarterbacks through the Elite 11. So by the time they hit the stage in college, he knows them. He's worked with them. He understands their weaknesses, their strengths, all of it, and provides unique insight on that. And so he knows Sam Levitt extremely well and had a chance to spend time with him before he went to Michigan State and then eventually transferred to Arizona State. So I think, well, it's going to be great to see how this continues to play out. But look at the storylines we're getting in college football right now with the expanded playoff, now with 12 teams. What's it going to look like when they expand it out to 16? So many more fan bases, so many more teams across the country that will have hope, more interest. It's helping the regular season, and it's providing real intrigue right up until the very end. And that's what we got this weekend. We have big games across the country with teams that need to win to solidify their spot in the playoff, teams that need to win to get into a conference title game with hopes of being able to make the playoff. And you had complete chaos last week with Ole Miss and Alabama going down, providing an opportunity for other schools. Because if Ole Miss and Alabama both win and don't stub their toe, a team like Indiana could be in real trouble. So that's what we're looking at. And for Oregon right now, it's just a matter of just be healthy, stay healthy, and then get ready to rock against Ohio State. That rematch is going to be epic. We could have Ohio State and Oregon not once, not twice, but 3 times meet up before we get to the eventual national championship. And probably 4 weeks ago, I thought Georgia was a team that no one wanted to face because of their defensive line power and the way they play. They're so good defensively. But I think it's wide open. I think there are multiple teams that can win the championship. I still think Georgia's probably the nastiest matchup because they're so good defensively and they just got bigger, stronger dudes on that side of the ball. But if you're Oregon right now, if you're Ohio State, if you're Georgia, if you're Notre Dame, there are multiple teams that have a pathway to winning a championship, which is wild. All right, we'll keep things rolling here on the Rip City Drive. I want to share some thoughts on what I saw last night. The AFC playoff picture is awesome, and John Harbaugh owns Jim Harbaugh right now. And you know that's got to kill Jim. The Chargers are on their way, though. They just need another year or two to put the roster together to get Jim's guys in there. They're going to be fine. I mean, Justin Herbert's a star, but Lamar Jackson last night was awesome. And the Ravens, after significant change on the defensive side of the ball after last year, they're starting to tighten things up on that end, which is going to help them as we progress throughout the season. And it looks like Bo Nix could be playoff bound in his rookie season, which is Well, it's great for me. All right, you got the Rip City Drive. Sean Hyken to join at 4:20. Michael Holton at 5:20 in studio. And we have Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday. Your chance to win coming up at 5. So turn them on and turn on those sad songs. Yeah, a little Elton John for you. Yeah, the next batch of college football rankings is going to come out at 5. Their ability to rank teams about as good as me being able to sing behind a microphone. It's not good. Like, what are they going to value tonight? Is it going to be strength of schedule? Is it going to be resume? Is it going to be where you lost, how you lost, eye test? Like, what's the committee going to go by tonight? Because they vary it week to week because they're buffoons. For a group of people that say they sit around and watch a lot of football, I really don't think they sit around and watch a lot of football. Or at least they have no idea how to apply the metrics they're supposed to apply to pick their teams. It's very bizarre. But I think the biggest question I have tonight, really two things. One, what are they going to do with Indiana after they got curb stomped by Ohio State 38-15 and looked hideous? Really an awful football game for Indiana. And the fact that they really don't have a resume. How far do they fall in the new batch of rankings coming up at 5? And then also, I guess the other question would be, how do they look at the 3-loss SEC teams? Now, there's a good chance we're going to get a 3-loss SEC team into the playoff. And it could happen in a couple of different ways, but I think one way would be Georgia right now. I think they're secure based on their resume and who they've played and the games they've won. I think they're in. So they had the win over Tennessee. They got the victory at Texas. They've got some quality wins. Now, they've got 2 losses. So they're going to beat Georgia Tech this weekend, and then they get into the SEC title game against either Texas or Texas A&M. Now, the committee is supposed to put great value on the conference title games, and they're not supposedly going to penalize you for losing your conference title game. So if Georgia, once they beat Georgia Tech and get in the SEC title game, if they drop a championship game to Texas or Texas A&M, they're going to get in the playoff. So that would be a 3-loss team. What I really want to know is for Texas. They don't really have a resume. Their best win right now is at Vandy, who's 6-5. They really haven't played anybody aside from Georgia. And in the game they played Georgia at home, they got worked 30-15. Georgia physically dominated that football game. So if Texas loses to Texas A&M this weekend, which is a definite possibility, what are they going to do with Texas? Because they're not going to be in the title game. They're going to have 2 losses, and they don't have a resume. So what do you do with Texas in that spot? Or if Texas A&M is able to get the win and they get into the SEC title game, is Texas A&M good? Are they going to be okay if they lose that game to Georgia, which I would expect them to do? So how is that going to work? So I'm fascinated by the entire setup, the whole scenario. I want to know how it all plays out. So that's what I'm looking at tonight with the release of the college football playoff rankings. How are they going to look at Indiana? How far do they fall? And Texas A&M with 3 losses. If they beat Texas, they're in the SEC title game. What if they lose to Georgia with 4 losses? Are they in or are they out? And if A&M wins the SEC championship game against Georgia, they're in. So I think what would happen in that situation, my guess would be if A&M were to beat Georgia, A&M and Georgia would both get in with 3 losses, and then they would throw in probably Tennessee, assuming they handle their business this weekend against Vandy. So, I don't know. It's very interesting to me. So we'll see how it plays out. The one thing I can tell you for sure, Oregon is totally legit, and they're secure in their spot. They'll be in the Big Ten title game. If they win that game, they'll be able to get the bye week and will not have to play in the opening round. If they lose, they'll play in the opening round, and that would set up a semifinal matchup with potentially probably Arizona State in the 4-5 matchup, something along those lines. So I do think 4 teams are going to get in from the Big Ten. I think Oregon and Ohio State are locks. Penn State and Indiana are locks, provided they take care of business this weekend. But the Nittany Lions host Maryland, and Indiana takes on Purdue. And the one thing I'm certain of after watching the entire football season, the Big Ten is trash. Aside from Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, and Indiana, the rest of the conference is just a hot mess. What an easy pathway through that conference. You know, for as much as they talk about how great their conference is, they put out a lot of bad football this year. Great at the top. Oregon and Ohio State are awesome. But after that, it's like, meh, not so much. And the SEC is just feasting on one another. And the Big 12, it's been great. The Big 12 has been awesome this year because the parity is real. It's provided exciting football games. And every team that you thought was going to be at the bottom of the conference is right there near the top, vying for an opportunity to get into the Big 12 title game. With Arizona State, their turnaround's amazing. One of the great stories in college football this year. Colorado, up until their loss to Kansas, was picked near the bottom of the conference. They're right there. Iowa State's vying to get in, and BYU's had a great season. They, too, were picked to finish near the bottom of the conference. If I had to guess, Arizona State's an 8.5-point favorite at Arizona. I would expect ASU to win, and they'll play either Iowa State or BYU. BYU hosts Houston. They'll win that game, and then Iowa State has to host Kansas State. That's a tough matchup. If they win, they're in. If they lose, BYU would be in. And then we get a rematch of BYU and Arizona State. I think Notre Dame and Boise State are good, and 2 teams from the ACC with Miami and SMU. All right, last night, Monday Night Football in the Harbaugh Bowl. John Harbaugh beat his brother again. How much do you think that kills Jim Harbaugh to know he can't get over on his brother? You know it's killing him. And he lost the Super Bowl to him when he was coach of the 49ers. But what I respect about the Ravens, and look, the Chargers, for you Justin Herbert fans out there, they're going to be fine. It's amazing what hiring one coach can do. And props to the Chargers. The Spanos family, long known as being a cheap-ass family that doesn't want to pay real money to have real coaches, and they've tried to operate on a shoestring budget, and so they bring in dum-dums who run their team into the ground. But they finally ponied up the scratch, and they brought in Jim Harbaugh, and he's turned it around completely. They're organized. They know what they're doing. They have an identity. They know how they want to play, and they're executing smartly in clutch situations. And they're protecting or trying their best to protect Justin Herbert and really focus on running the football because that's what Harbaugh likes to do. They just need a little more time to tinker with the roster to continue to load up with the type of players that Jim Harbaugh wants. And once they get that, they're going to be a super legit championship contender. But they're up against it this year with the salary cap. They let some of the veterans go. So it's just a matter of time until Harbaugh has that thing humming. And they're already going to be a playoff team this year. But in terms of being a legit contender in a very difficult conference, they just need a little more time to continue to, retool the roster in the image of Jim. But props to the Ravens because they lost their defensive coordinator, Mike McDonald, who's head coach in Seattle now. They lost their edge rushers. They lost Patrick Queen. And so they had a lot of retooling to do on that side of the football with the new coordinator. But you can see them, and we saw it last night, their pass defense, their pass rush, they're doing a better job now. They've been number one against the run all year, but they're improving in the pass defense game. And the weird part about Lamar Jackson, he won the MVP last year. He's playing better football this year than last year, and Josh Allen's probably going to win the MVP. But they are super legit, and they're going to be really tough in the postseason. So I think the AFC, it's pretty clear, right? It's Kansas City, it's Buffalo, it's Baltimore. Those are the 3 teams. The question is who's going to come out on top. All right, Sean Hyken with the latest on the Trailblazers and the litany of injuries. We'll get the latest from him at 4:20. Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday, your chance to win tickets to see the Mavericks at 5. And Michael Holton on Hoops in studio at 5:20. Yeah, rough night for the Trailblazers. 123-98 loss at Memphis. Portland was just 8 of 46 from three-point range. Portland will conclude their 5-game road trip tomorrow in Indiana against the Pacers. Tip-off at 4. Chris Burkhardt will have game day at 2 on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio presented by Coors Light. I will go over the lengthy injury report for the Trailblazers. Sean Highkin, our Trailblazer insider, will join us at 4:20 from college football. Oregon's going to take on Washington Saturday in their season finale. With 3 straight losses to the Dogs, Coach Lanning was asked if that will be used as motivation.
Again, I think I've said it several times. Motivation's overrated, right? Like, our guys have to want to go out there and execute at a really high level. You know, since the beginning of the season, we talked about playing our best football at the end of November. Well, we're there, right? So this is our opportunity to go play our best football against a good team.
Oregon is the only remaining unbeaten team in FBS. North Carolina's fired head coach Mack Brown for a second time. He will coach the finale against NC State, but no decision made on their upcoming bowl game. Aaron Rodgers says the Jets are his first option if he plays in 2025. I think it's pretty safe to say that every day is a good day for Hall & Oates. Sean Highkin, our Trailblazer insider, will join me coming up in 20 minutes. And thanks for your time. Hope you're enjoying your Tuesday. It's amazing the chaos that took place in this past week in college football. Indiana went down 38-15 to Ohio State. At that point in time, right after that game, because it was an early kick, they looked like they were out of playoff discussion because they don't have a resume. And that ruined their unbeaten season. Alabama falls to Oklahoma 24-3, which was a shocker to most. That put Indiana back in the mix. Ole Miss loses at Florida, and suddenly the Gators are on fire, 24-17. That gave more life to Indiana and other teams around the country. BYU loses to Arizona State, 28-23. BYU was the Cinderella story, unbeaten, and then back-to-back losses to Kansas and Arizona State. And now the Sun Devils, coming off back-to-back 3-win seasons, control their own destiny for the Big 12 championship game and a potential playoff berth. Texas A&M looked like they were in, and then they lose in multiple overtimes to Auburn. But because of other teams not handling their business, they're in the SEC title game, which is amazing. It's truly remarkable. So wild. Colorado falls to Kansas 37-21 as the Jayhawks roll up over 300 yards rushing. And Army, one of the Cinderella stories, gets thumped by Notre Dame. And now the Irish are in prime position to get a playoff berth. I'll tell you one thing. Alabama fans going to be pulling hard for SC this weekend. Notre Dame makes the trip across country. They got to play SC, and they have to win that game to secure their spot in the playoff. Can Lincoln Riley? Probably not. But there are a lot of teams that are going to be pulling for SC to pull off the upset. It's crazy. So tonight, I think we're just under an hour away. They'll reveal a new batch of playoff rankings. Keep an eye on how they deal with Miami and SMU. Are they both going to be inside the top 10? Where's Boise at? How are they going to treat the 3-loss SEC teams like Ole Miss and Alabama? And how far does Indiana fall after getting worked by Ohio State? Critical questions to keep in mind. And then, of course, the obvious, what is going to be their main metric tonight? Because it varies every week. And we'll get the release of those rankings coming up at 5. If you're wondering how upset Alabama fans are, I'll play a little snippet of audio for you from an Alabama fan who is very upset. And we'll play that at 4:45. It's awesome. Because I know, look, the one thing we can all agree on, everyone loved watching Alabama get rocked by Oklahoma, potentially ending their playoff hopes. Chances are they're done now, and we all love that. So we're going to hear some real piss and vinegar from a Bama fan coming up at 4:45. I think you'll enjoy it. Now, for me, it's crazy how things develop over the course of time. I grew up in Oklahoma, and in Oklahoma, the only thing that really matters is Oklahoma football, especially back in the late 70s, early 80s. I was born in 75, became a football fan early 80s, and I was exposed to Oklahoma football and Barry Switzer. So been an Oklahoma fan my whole life. Always will be because it's where I'm from, right? We can all relate to that. But I would like to announce that Arizona State, the Sun Devils, have removed Oklahoma as the number one team in my heart and in my mind. And it's pretty cool how it all took place. But my buddy Steve, my best friend Steve, he lives down in Vegas now, used to live up here in the Northwest. He and I have been friends now for over 25 years, best friends. He's like my brother. Well, back in 2000, so 24 years ago, he's like, hey, we should do a road trip down to Arizona. I'm like, really? Why? He goes, because I've been down there before to see some NFL games, and it's a great setup, and the whole area is awesome, and Sun Devil Stadium's cool. I was like, all right, I'm in. So back in 2000, first weekend in November, we went down for Saturday night USC and Arizona State. I'd never been to Arizona, had never been to an ASU game, had never been to a Cardinal game. And back then, the Cardinals used to play at Sun Devil Stadium before they got their new stadium out in Glendale. So we flew in, we landed, we went over to check out the new baseball park at the time. It was called the Bob, where the Diamondbacks play. And they had a Fridays restaurant there. So we went to the stadium. And we ate there at the Fridays because you could look inside the stadium while you're having your lunch or whatever. And we watched college football that day, which was pretty sweet. So we did that, and we checked things out and enjoyed that. And then we went over to the Sun Devil Stadium and got our tickets for the day. This is back when you had to actually purchase, hard tickets that you would have to hold on to and make sure you don't lose them before game time. And the USC kickoff wasn't until later that night. So we went to the college football game. It was double overtime. Carson Palmer was the quarterback for USC, and they won the game 44-38. ASU had a mad comeback in the fourth quarter to force overtime. Ended up being a great game. The next day, we went to go see the Cardinals, and at the time it was the Washington Redskins. Aeneas Williams had a fumble recovery that he returned for 102 yards, which at the time was the longest fumble recovery in NFL history. And the Cardinals pulled off the upset with their quarterback, Jake Plummer, who played at ASU. And then that night, we hopped in our car and drove over to, at the time, America West Arena and saw the Rockets and Suns. So we did a little, like a trifecta. So we caught 3 games in the course of 2 days, and then we took off on Monday. And ever since then, we have continued to go down to Arizona. And I've just fallen in love with the area because, great weather, great sports town. They've got all the major sports, and they've got, a couple of different colleges. They got multiple things you can do down there if you're a sports fan. And plus, if you're a baseball fan, going down in the springtime to check out some spring training ball, which I've done, is awesome because many teams down there have their spring training facilities. And you can go check out some baseball in a very chill environment, which is nice. So Steve and I are going to roll down to Tucson this weekend. We're going to do a day trip down to Zona. We're going to fly in on Saturday morning, and we've got a car rental. We're going to drive to Tucson. The game kicks off at 1:30, Arizona and Arizona State. If the Sun Devils win, they'll secure their spot in the Big 12 championship game. And then after that, we'll drive back to Phoenix, and we'll catch our flight out that night. He's going back to Vegas. I'll come back up here to the Northwest. Day trips. I'm telling you, if you have not done a day trip, it is absolutely the way to go. You don't have to worry about a hotel. You don't have to worry about any bags. I'll take a little, clear plastic baggie with my sunglasses and a couple of nutrition bars, and that's about it. And then we'll drive out, catch the game, head back, fly back, and boom, you're done. A one-shot deal, a day trip. It's great. So this will be the 21st game that we've been down to in the Valley over the last 24 years. This will be our 4th Territorial Cup game between Arizona and Arizona State. We've been to 3 bowl games, 2 Vegas Bowls, and 1 Sun Bowl involving ASU. And we were at the Oregon ASU game back in 2019 where Jaden Daniels destroyed Oregon with that 3rd down and 17 throw to Brandon Ayuk. That was a wild scene. So over the years, ASU's had some good teams, but not great. They've had some great players, but for the most part, just a middling team. And the last couple of years were just awful. But that area in the Valley, and for you Beaver or Duck fans who have traveled down there, you know what I'm talking about. Tempe is perfect. The area around the stadium is nice. They got Mill Avenue. They got great restaurants. It's been built up, excellent hotels. And the weather when you head down is always amazing. I think this weekend it's going to be like 75 degrees and sunny at kickoff. And they got beautiful people everywhere. And Sun Devil Stadium is legendary. And since it got revamped, it's really terrific. They took some seats out. I think the capacity now is right around 55,000. And it's just a great setup to go watch a game. Easy access to get to from the airport. It really is a sleeping giant. But now with Kenny Dillingham and the new AD, they've got the support inside the school to be able to compete, which I think is terrific. And I was a big fan of Kenny Dillingham when he was at Oregon and his work with Bo Nix. So when he got the job, I was intrigued. He grew up in Arizona. He's a Valley kid. He was a huge Devils fan, went to school there, met his wife there who went to school there. And for him, this is his dream job. So this year, they've got Sam Levitt, who's from West Lynn, highest-rated freshman in college football, and Cam Scattaboo, who came over from the FCS level, one of the best players in the nation, and second in total yards from scrimmage. He is fun to watch, and he's really the heart and soul of the program. He's amazing. So it's been great to organically get involved with the program that all started on a road trip with my buddy some 24 years ago. And so that's where I'm at. And I'm excited about this weekend to see if they have a chance to go from 3 wins to getting to the Big 12 championship. They've got 6 wins of improvement already. And if they win this weekend, it'll be 7 year to year. How wild is that? And if they win the Big 12 championship game, it'd be 8 games year to year improvement. That's hard to do. It's never been done before, 6 games in program history. So it's pretty impressive, and I'm excited about that. But Sam Levitt from West Lynn, he's really good. He doesn't have a lot of experience, but he's playing like a veteran. He's mobile. He's got a live arm, good leadership skills. His work ethic is good, and he was asked about the rivalry, Arizona and Arizona State. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot. I feel like you can't really grasp it until you play in it. So I'm going to, take everybody's advice and go into the game and just embrace the moment and just feel the passion.
Yeah, you got to like that. And then Levitt was asked about, rivalry games. And as I'm sure many of you have thought before, maybe your buddies even talk about, like, man, anything can happen in a rivalry game. Here's Sam Levitt.
I've seen a bunch of rivalry games in basketball and in football, where just some crazy stuff happens. And, I always think to, just March Madness. I mean, this is the first year in college football, where you're going to have 12 teams playing for a championship. And, you never know what can really happen, and stuff like that. And then when it comes to rivalry games, talent really doesn't matter so much. It just comes down to execution and who can control the moments and, emotions and stuff like that. So, I think everybody on the team understands, and we're going to have someone come talk to us. We don't know yet, just to, express the magnitude.
There you go. They're going to have someone come in. My guess would be probably Jake Plummer, legendary quarterback from ASU, and we'll see what happens. But what I like about Kenny Dillingham is, college football, and I hear this all the time from fans and, longtime boosters, people that have watched the game for years. A lot of people, older people, are uncomfortable with all the changes that are going on in college football, because you've got NIL now, you've got the transfer portal, kids are able to have more power and freedom to move about, which is nice. You have to have a coach like Dan Lanning, like Kenny Dillingham, who embraces the here and now. Take a listen to this.
So buy your season tickets. Let's make that every single week of next year. Because why would you not want to be in that environment? That was one of the most fun places to be in college football. Why would you not want to do that every Saturday? All it is the fan base saying this is what we choose to do. So buy your tickets, donate to keep our team, right? And let's repeat next year, and let's try to run it back at home. Thank y'all. Go Devils. Activate the Valley, baby.
It's pretty simple. When things change, you either recommit or you decommit. And Kenny Dillingham is embracing the way things are. So instead of complaining about things like Dabo Swinney, he embraces it and is out there encouraging people to buy tickets, activate the Valley, get involved with their team, and donate to support the NIL and the growth at Arizona State so things can continue. You've got to adapt and change or you're going to get left behind. And that's why it's great to see a guy at 34 years of age from his hometown, from his school, coaching and doing it with enthusiasm and energy. It's a great story in college football this year, along with Indiana, Army, BYU, and the other great stories we've seen so far this year. All right, when we come back, we'll navigate through all the injuries with the Trailblazers. Sean Highkin, our Trailblazer insider, will join us next on the Rip City Drive. All right, joining us now on the Rip City Drive is our Trailblazers insider from RoseGardenReport.com. It's Sean Highkin. And Sean, it's great to talk with you, my friend. I guess we should start with the injuries to get everyone up to date, and we'll go player by player. Robert Williams III, he played in the first half last night at Memphis, but did not return on the bench in the second half. What's the update for Time Lord?
Well, he's in the concussion protocol officially, which means he has a concussion, and there's not a hard and set timeline for when he can get out of the concussion protocol. It's it's a case by case thing. It's, some guys can get out of it after a couple days if it was not that severe. And then some guys like Jeremy Grant had one last season that cost him a week or two. So it's going to depend on, how he responds. But obviously, given that it's Rob and he has all this other injury stuff, they're probably going to be pretty cautious with that. So I would expect him to miss at least the next couple of games.
You know what's weird, Sean, with his injury history? When he didn't return to the bench last night, I was really concerned, and I know you were, as were many of other people around the team and obviously Trailblazer fans. I feel dirty about this, but I was actually happy to hear that he was in the concussion protocol and it wasn't another leg injury, honestly.
I had the same thought. I mean, obviously concussions are not anything to play around with either, but, that's at least, you're totally right. At least it's not like, oh, he tweaked his knee again and it's the one that he just had the surgery on, or, he missed the first couple of weeks of the season with a hamstring, and so and so he tweaked that again. At least like the fact that it wasn't that and it wasn't any kind of lower body thing that he's had all these issues with throughout his career. I mean, if you want a silver lining, not that there really is any silver lining with any of these guys missing any time, but at least it wasn't that. I mean, obviously, with concussions, it can vary wildly. Like I said, some guys are going to only miss a couple games with it. Some guys are going to be out for a while with it, but I guess you just got to hope that it wasn't too severe of a concussion and he's okay as far as symptoms and clearing the protocol after a couple of days. But given again some of his other history and where the Blazers are at in their season, I don't think they're going to be rushing to clear him from the concussion protocol. I don't think they're going to, and then it's also probably going to be a thing where, even once he's cleared, because if you're in the concussion protocol, you can't do anything as far as like being on the court, and they want you to, avoid light and avoid moving around a lot and stuff to help you recover. So once he's out of that, they're probably going to need to ramp him up just because he's a guy that's had so many other injury issues throughout his career. So it might be a little bit for Rob, but you hope that this is all it really ends up being.
Yeah, you probably have experienced this too. When players come in, aside from just the fact that they're Trailblazers, but when you cover players and they come in from different teams and you get a chance to find out what they're about, their personality, some of the things they've gone through and what they're like as a teammate and a professional and the way they handle their business. Like Robert Williams is one of those guys that I root for as an individual because I like him and the way he handles his work and his business, and I want good things to happen to him. That's why I felt that way.
Totally. I mean, he's a great guy. Everybody likes him. Everyone gets along with him. He's kind of the vocal leader on the team. He's kind of emerged as that now that he's actually around the team more. Because remember last year he had that knee injury so early into the season that then, he goes and has surgery and has to do his rehab. So he's away from the team for most of the year. But now that he's been around for this whole season, he's kind of emerges that guy. And then just, coming into the season, you look at, how bad that injury was and, the one that he had last year and how much he had to go through to get back from that injury. And then he gets back and he's playing the way that he's been playing since he came back. I mean, you're absolutely right. He's somebody that everybody can't really help but root for.
We're talking with Sean Highkin, our Trailblazers insider here on the Rip City Drive. All right, Scoot Henderson, he was out with I think it was a thigh contusion. He hasn't played in a couple of games, and then he was involved in that rideshare incident. What's the latest with Scoot?
Improving. That's all I really know. I mean, he's listed as questionable, so there's a chance he could play tomorrow. I mean, that's just kind of a day-to-day thing. I think as soon as they he wants to get back out there. So as soon as he feels comfortable and they feel comfortable, he'll be back out there. But I don't think that one will be too much longer. And
it was a back strain or some type of, it was back related, right, with the rideshare.
That's what they're saying. Yeah, I mean, I obviously wasn't there, but he was in the back seat of an Uber or a Lyft or something like that in Houston and got rear-ended, and so he was having a little bit of back issues, and so they're being careful with it.
Well, I thought you were in the car with him. I wanted details on the accident, how it went down, my friend.
Right, the make and model of the car, all the right, exactly.
Yeah. All right, Chris Murray, bruised sternum. That sounds painful. Never had one of those, but what's the latest with Chris?
I don't know much about that one, but he's listed as questionable also for tomorrow. He missed last night's game in Memphis, and is questionable for tomorrow.
All right, two more players with knees. Jeremy Grant. What's the latest with Grant and the knee?
Listed as doubtful. Right now they're calling it a left knee sprain. I think they're still, last I was told, they're still getting imaging done on it, so we don't know the full severity of it. I will say that the fact that, when they put out, because they put out that press release in Indiana, and they listed Jeremy as doubtful, which to me, if they were worried about this being like any kind of super long-term thing or anything that was going to cost him like a big chunk of the season or that would require surgery or anything like that, they would have just ruled him as out.
Yeah.
Because they ruled Donovan Clingan out on Sunday for Monday's game because they knew already that it was going to be something that they would have to, it would take a little bit of time to recover from. The fact that they're not already listing Jeremy as out and they're calling him doubtful, I doubt he plays in the next couple of games, maybe the next week or so, but the fact that they are still only listing him as doubtful and not out, I think that's, if you want to take any kind of, reassurance that it's not something super serious, I think that would be it.
All right. What's the latest with Donovan Clingan and DeAndre Ayton?
Clingan has, he had that knee, got bumped in the second game in Houston, the game that they won where he had the 19 rebounds. He comes back in. That's the thing. I mean, I understand there are going to be people that are saying like, oh, why was he allowed to come back in? I think that's one of those things where it's just, it's a real-time judgment call. The player tells you he's good to go. There's nothing structurally, obviously wrong with the knee there. Some of these guys are just going to want to fight through stuff, so they let him go back in. And then in that last couple of days, they've gotten imaging done on him, and they said that it was a grade 2 MCL sprain in the left knee. So, that's not as severe as it could be, but it's more severe than a grade 1. A grade 1 is the mildest one, as much as there's a mild sprain of anything. And so they're saying he's going to be reevaluated in 2 weeks, which doesn't mean he'll be back in 2 weeks. It just means he'll be reevaluated in 2 weeks, which means after that it'll probably be another week. Assuming, if in the 2 weeks they say, okay, everything's healed, you're good to go, then you're cleared to, go back and, do full contact, then it's probably going to be another week of ramping back up and before he's able to actually play. So it's going to be a few weeks on Clingan at the very least.
All right. And DeAndre Ayton, he's got a right index finger issue. What's the latest with him?
He's missed I guess this would be he's missed, 7 games because he missed the 2 minutes. The last game he played in was the Memphis one that they got blown out in, but then, he missed the two Minnesota games, the Atlanta game, and then the first 4 games of the road trip with that finger injury. He's listed tomorrow. Basically, this whole time he's been listed as doubtful with that injury, and then they've said on the day of that he's not going to play. They're listing him tomorrow as questionable, which, this is all just kind of, reading. These things all kind of mean the same thing at a certain point. But the fact that they're listing him as questionable before this game, after listing him as doubtful before most of the other games, that would be a sign that he's getting closer to being ready to go, and that there's a chance maybe he returns tomorrow for the last game of the road trip. Which they just need bodies at this point, especially with Rob out for the next at least couple games while he's in the concussion protocol and Clingan out for the next few weeks. So they just need bodies there. So that's it would definitely be helpful if he could play again soon.
All right. So with all these guys missing action tomorrow, what's the likely starting lineup that you would expect to see in Indiana tomorrow?
So if Scoot can't go, it'll be Scoot's not going to start, I guess, anyway, because Simons is back. But it's Simons, Sharp, Tumani, Denny, I get maybe WAP, although they played when Rob didn't come out to start the second half last night, they had Jabari Walker out there in his place. And so, with Memphis being, or not Memphis, with Indiana, the team that they're playing tomorrow, also missing most of their center depth, losing James Wiseman and losing Isaiah Jackson. They're a little bit of a smaller team now because of that. So maybe they go Jabari again, but I don't know. I don't know who the starting center is going to be, but I would guess it's going to be Simons, Sharp, Kamara, Avdia as the other 4 starters would be my guess.
We're talking with Sean Highkin, our Trailblazers insider here on the Rip City Drive. You know, one player that I really enjoy watching play and just his story is Denny Avdia. Had really the last couple of games, 2 of his best that he's had this year in Portland with the defense and his all-around play, the rebounding, the scoring, the way he pushes the tempo. And what are your thoughts on the way Avdia is playing, the way he's kind of settled into that bench role?
He's started to put it together a little bit. I mean, the shooting is obviously still very up and down. The last couple of games, the shooting has come around a little bit, but everything else, the playmaking stuff, the defense is great. The way he can attack the basket, like that stuff. He's even when the shot isn't falling, he's found other ways to be impactful, and now the shot is starting to come around a little bit. So we'll see if that can continue kind of on a consistent basis. But he's starting to kind of hit his stride a little bit in the last week or so.
Yeah, what's interesting too is what Coach Billups said after the game, that second game against Houston, where he spent that time down low defending Şengün. You know, Coach Billups is like, hey, he's been telling us and asking us, begging us to be able to play those type of situations one-on-one. Like, he wants to embrace those roles. I think it's good to have players like that on the roster who want to take on those type of challenges.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons, besides just, what his talent, but like that sort of mentality and that sort of, wanting to play, at that end of the floor on defense. That's one of the reasons that the organization felt so strongly about him and traded what they traded to get him.
I've had a few people reach out. Credit to Jabari Walker, for not playing for an extended period of time. And then when he stepped in last night, he was ready and was productive. I like his mindset and the way he approaches the game. I think he's a very heady basketball player, Sean. Why hasn't he gotten more minutes?
Who do you take the minutes away from? And I mean, I guess now he's going to get more minutes because they have so many guys out. But, he plays kind of at that 4-5, between the 4 and the 5. And so when they have all their guys out, available, you're going to take minutes away from Jeremy for him? Are you going to take away minutes from Denny or Tumani from him? You're going to take away minutes from Donovan or Robert Williams or DeAndre Ayton when he's healthy? Like, there's just too. It's one of those things where when they have everybody healthy, they just have too many guys that need to play minutes, and so a guy like Jabari, who's perfectly capable of playing rotation minutes, just gets squeezed out. But then when they're in a position like they're in now and are going to be in for at least the next couple of weeks where a lot of those guys are out and they're going to be shorthanded, that's a guy you like to have, be able to come in and that you're going to at least be able to get some good rotation minutes out of him.
Now, one final thought. I've seen Memphis, twice now up close because they faced the Blazers twice early on in the season. Look, they're playing good basketball, Sean. Their assist numbers are off the charts. They're very effective on offense, a lot of player movement and ball movement. And Josh seems to be getting more comfortable in his role. And they've got a lot of guys that most people don't know who are really good. I'm just impressed with their whole operation. What do you see in them?
That's a team that's just drafted really well. I mean, even besides, guys like Ja, a guy like Desmond Bane, who was and I know he's been out for a little bit, but Desmond Bane, who's was a late first-round pick, has been really good for them. And then some of these under-the-radar guys like Santi Aldama or Jake LaRavia, and this guy, Scottie Pippen Jr., who's been kind of a big story in the big early going of this season. Jay Huff, who they just converted from a two-way to a real contract. That's a front office and an organization that's just really good at kind of finding under-the-radar guys that can contribute.
Yeah, even Huff, I'm watching him like, who is this guy? He's a baller too. Yeah, it's impressive. I like the way they play. I don't think they're a title contender, but definitely a playoff threat in the Western Conference for sure. All right, Sean Highkin, anything in particular you're focusing on at the Rose Garden Report that you got coming up over the next week or so?
Got some mailbag stuff that's been rolling out over this week leading into the holiday, and then they've got a little bit of a homestand coming up. They've got that I'll be covering. If I want to direct people to one thing I've done recently, a story that I wrote. It came out last Friday about some of the stuff that the Blazers are doing at the G League level with the Rip City Remix and Sergio Oliva, who's one of their assistant GMs, who's serving as the head coach of the team this year. That they're trying some different stuff as far as different strategies for developing players. So that's something that I would encourage people to go check out if they haven't yet.
All right, check out rosegardenreport.com. He's on social media at Highkin. Sean Highkin, our Trailblazers insider here on the Rip City Drive. Sean, happy Thanksgiving, my friend. I'll talk to you soon and appreciate the time.
Yeah, you too, Chad.
There you go, Sean Highkin with the latest. None of that news was particularly inspiring. Just a bunch of injury news, but the Trailblazers continue to battle on. Like I said, the biggest frustration for me is I've really enjoyed watching the young players get a chance to play to see what they can do game to game. And so when these guys get nicked up and they're out of the lineup, it sucks, especially Donovan Clingan. The guy's been awesome this year. And now he's got a trick knee, and he's going to miss a little bit of time. Jeremy Grant, probably is not going to play tomorrow. Scoot Henderson with the rideshare incident. I've had a couple of ride shares where I thought my driver was possessed or insane or crazy, and I thought, we're going to die. And I've been texting people that I'm in the car with, like, we are not safe right now. And it sounds like Scoot got one of those people maybe. So tomorrow, 4 o'clock tip, they'll finish out the 5-game road trip, and then they come back home, and they've got games at Moda Center on Friday and also on Sunday. Let's see here. So Friday, it's the Kings. I think I said the Jazz earlier. So they're going to play the Kings on Friday. And then Sunday, the Mavericks are in town with Luka and Kyrie and company. And then next week, Tuesday, they're in Los Angeles to take on the Clippers. And then they come back home for a game on Friday against the Utah Jazz. There you have it. Big thanks to Sean Hyken. Tony in Boring has hit me up. And Shacker, don't think I didn't see your work and what you put on the phone screener, buddy. I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing right now, and I don't like it. Tony in Portland says a grade 2 ACL sprain. Really? No. It's an MCL. A grade 2 MCL sprain for Donovan Clingan. He says, really? Well, now it's official. Donovan Clingan is a Trailblazer center. And that is the downplayed version of it. It's got to be worse than that. Management knows the Trailblazer fans are very sensitive about center injuries. It's so frustrating. Well, the good news is that the grade 2 MCL, he's going to be okay. It could have been worse. It's not. It wasn't a grade 1, so it could have been better, a little bit better, but he's going to be okay. I just love watching Clingan play. Smart, love his tenacity. The 19 rebound, no point, 3 block performance was legendary, and his teammates like him. I mean, he brings that winning mentality from UConn. He's just the right type of guy. He plays winning basketball, and that's why Coach Billups loves him. And that's what I like about Denny Avdia. He hasn't shot the ball particularly well. He's had some turnover issues early in the year, but he's willing to do whatever it takes to win. And I like guys who are willing to do whatever it takes to win games. It's terrific. I want more players like that. So, so we got this audio here. Some of you may have heard it, but I'm going to play it for you just because I know people love the fact that Alabama's suffering right now. After that loss to Oklahoma 24-3, they got curb stomped and looked terrible. Worst SEC loss for Alabama since before Nick Saban. And if you're Kalen DeBoer, and I respect Kalen DeBoer because I know he's great, but this is why you don't take over a job after a legend like Nick Saban. Because no matter how good you are or what you do, everything that you do or don't get done is going to be compared to your predecessor, which in this case is the greatest coach in the history of college football, Nick Saban. You can't win. And the fan base down there is crazy. They're not going to be patient. They're not going to give you time. And if you continue to lose games to Vandy, they're going to run you out of town. See, I respect guys like Kalen DeBoer because they don't think like we do. So he doesn't look at it and say, ooh, I can't follow a guy like Nick Saban. Although it's probably smart to look at it that way. They want the challenge. But this is why it's not the best of ideas to take that job. Because they're not going to be patient with you because they're used to winning. And not just winning, but winning championships and winning a lot. And Nick Saban was about as good as it gets. And now you've got 3 losses in your first year. Tennessee, Vandy, and Oklahoma. And the Vandy and Oklahoma losses were horrendous. Horrendous. All right, we'll keep things rolling. When we come back, we're going to hear how upset Alabama is from this Bama fan named Legend. And Michael Holton's going to join me in studio at 5:20. Chad doing Rip City Drive on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. This is a great song. This is a song that makes me happy. I can't dance, but it makes me want to dance, too. All right, give it to me, boy. Give me some volume on this shacker. All right, we're going to play Name That Movie coming up at 5 o'clock. Your chance to win Trailblazer tickets as they take on the Mavericks Sunday at Moda Center. So we'll play Name That Movie. I pulled a clip, and the first person with the correct answer will do it at 5 o'clock. So that's coming up here in 15 minutes. Michael Holton will join me in studio coming up at 5:20. I just got this message from Sean and Sandy, and we're also going to hear from this classic Bama fan. His Call into Feinbaum show in just a moment. Name that tune coming up, or name that movie coming up at 5 o'clock for your chance to see the Mavericks and Trailblazers. But we had this, I was talking about the rideshare incident with Scoot, right? So Sean hits me up, and he sends me this message, and I really think he's crazy. He goes, "Hey, brother, I only take radio cab all my life. True professionals, and have been a pillar in the Portland community forever. To me, if someone uses Lyft or Uber, it's like if you hired a barely/hardly professional contractor with little experience and not in a union to save money. You usually get what you pay for. Riding safely in an automobile is pretty important." I really don't think there's any comparison. I think anyone that uses a cab is insane, unless you're desperate and you have no other options. The problem with the cab ride is, one, they're a lot more expensive because they use that meter, and we all know, none of us really know how the meter works. We just know that we're getting screwed. Like, you're just going to have to bend over and take whatever the meter tells you that you have to pay, and there's no way around it, right? And my other issue with the cabs is that their vehicles don't smell as good, and the driver inevitably has BO and garlic breath. Like, the guy's just been chewing on garlic cloves right up until the point where you jump in his rig. It's like, what's up with the body odor and your breath? I don't like your breath or your body odor, and I don't like that meter that just continues to tick away, ripping me off. It's ridiculous. And the great thing about Uber and Lyft or whatever rideshare you use is that it's user-friendly. You got the app. And no matter where you're at, you just punch it in, and within like 2 minutes, you got someone there to pick you up. It's genius. And it's cheaper. And their car smells better, and most of the time, the person's not going to have garlic breath. And that's a win. It's great. The rideshare system is awesome. Here's another question. Whatever happened to SEC guy? That is from East Coast Earl. He actually chimed in recently, my friend. He chimed in recently. He was on a station down in Houston. I'll see if I can pull a clip from SEC guy to give you a little taste of what he had to say just a few weeks ago. But he's alive. He's supposedly retired, but he's so upset with Kalen DeBoer and the whole fallout with everything that's going on there that he felt the need to chime in. So he is around. He is around and frustrated, which is great. But no, who uses it? Seriously, who out there uses a taxi cab now? Seriously. In fact, here's SEC guy a few weeks ago down in Houston sharing his frustration on Coach DeBoer.
We keep them in there to keep the grades up. But listen, at least they're in an SEC state. But they're not real SEC. We don't really claim them. Look, I want DeBoer out just like everyone else does. That guy's a joke. He came from the Pacific Northwest. I told you they couldn't play football. I told people forever. That's a bunch of sugarfoots over there. So, Tupelo football. Who plays flag football anymore? You don't do that. They bring that guy down here from Washington, and all of a sudden he figures out, we can't win at all here. This is too hard. Boy, this is too hard. Listen, we got to get through this year, get rid of him, and then get Kirby in here, or maybe bring Dan Lannon back home because he does have some Georgia blood in him at least. We got to get rid of the boy. You're right. That's a disaster.
All right. Speaking of disasters, that's SEC guy. Here's legend calling in to talk to Paul Feinbaum. So just sit back and enjoy the next 3 minutes and 18 seconds of your life.
Man, I never been so embarrassed in all my life. 3 friggin' losses. Are you friggin' kidding me? Are you friggin' kidding me? This is disgusting, man. What I seen Saturday night, that was pathetic. It was disgusting, man. Paul, Going from Coach Saban to Coach DeBoer, it's like going to bed married to Beyonce and waking up with Whoopi Goldberg laying next to you, brother. How do we accept it? Is this acceptable, Alabama fans? Is this Alabama football? Is this what we signed up for? Is this what Bear Bryant built? Is this what Nick Saban built? Man, I'm disgusted. You ought to be disgusted, too. You know, I heard Coach DeBoer in his press conference after the game talking about we need to learn how to do better. Nah, dude, all that crap's over with. You ain't going to the playoffs, and every real Alabama fan don't give a damn now because there's nothing at stake. I don't even give a damn about the Iron Bowl. I don't even care who I piss off. I don't care which one of you little Alabama fans get your feelings hurt because legend keeps it 100, but damn the Iron Bowl. We about national championships at Alabama. I give a damn about beating some weak-ass Auburn team. It's about playoffs and championships. It's just pathetic. And this is what hurts my heart, Paul. Can I tell you what hurts my heart?
What's that?
What hurts my heart is it's clear this guy is overwhelmed. And you done took the greatest program in the world, and you can't handle this job. Come on, somebody testify with me. Somebody get up and say amen and hallelujah. All you got to do is look at this guy. He is overwhelmed. He is out of his league. He had no idea what he was stepping into. As far as me and the Sidewalk alumni, I want to tell you this, Coach DeBoer. I had an aunt. She got married about 8 times. He had 8 different husbands. And I always wonder, every other year I see my aunt with a new man. And my mama asked my aunt one day, Aunt Marie, let me ask you a question. Why you got all these men? Why you changing one man to the next? And I'll never forget what my aunt said. She said, you can't fix stupid, but you can divorce it. And on behalf of me and 70% of the Alabama fan base, we want a damn divorce. This is unacceptable at the University of Alabama. Either accept it and be a real damn fan and realize where we got to where we at, or sit your ass down and shut up. This is unacceptable. It was a pathetic performance as I've ever seen. I've never been more embarrassed by it. Never been more embarrassed by what I've seen. It means more to me. It means something to me, baby. Maybe it don't mean a damn thing to you, but it means something to me, baby. It means something to me. Somebody get me a damn basketball ticket. I'm out the damn door. Elvis has left the damn effing building.
There you go. Alabama will be pulling hard for USC this weekend. They would need Notre Dame to lose. They need help to get in because as of right now, they're not. And we'll get the latest rankings coming out here after the top of the hour. All right, we come back, and when we do, it's your chance to win tickets for the Trailblazers and Mavericks, courtesy of your Portland Trailblazers, presented by Lazy Boy. Name that movie, and if you are the first person with the correct answer, you will check out the Trailblazers and Dallas Mavericks on Sunday. All right, it's 5 o'clock. What's up, my friends? Coming up in a few minutes on ESPN, we'll get the latest batch of college football playoff rankings. Oregon will take on Washington Saturday in their season finale. Oregon is the only remaining unbeaten team in the FBS. It'll be 4:30 on NBC. The Trailblazers took one on the chin last night, a 123-98 loss at Memphis. Portland just 8 of 46 from downtown. They conclude their 5-game road trip tomorrow in Indiana against the Pacers. Tip-off at 4. Chris Burkhardt will have game day at 2. It's presented by Coors Light on your home of the Blazers 620 Rip City Radio. Donovan Clingan will be out at least 2 weeks with a mild knee sprain. Elsewhere, North Carolina's fired head coach Mac Brown. He'll coach his finale against NC State, but no decision has been made on their upcoming bowl game. Aaron Rodgers says the Jets are his first option if he plays in 2025. Michael Holton in studio at 5:20. It's time to play Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday. I hate how ESPN is doing this right now. They're supposed to release the new batch of college football playoff rankings right now, but the show's not going to be on until after the Memphis-Michigan State basketball game that's on right now, and there's still 5 minutes left in the game, which means a bunch of timeouts, a bunch of foul calls, and it's going to be another 20 to 30 minutes before we get that show on, because I want to see what the rankings will reveal. What do they think about the 3-loss SEC teams, namely Bama and Ole Miss? Where do they have Georgia? What about Notre Dame? What about Indiana coming off their drubbing at the hands of Ohio State? A lot of questions to be answered. So come on, get with it, ESPN. Where's Boise compared to Arizona State? All right, it's time to play Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday. We do it a variety of different ways. Today I chose a movie, so we're going to play a clip from a movie. And the first person with the correct answer will get a pair of tickets for the Mavericks and Trailblazers, which is coming up Sunday at Moda Center. So you get the Trailblazers taking on Luka and Kyrie. That's called good basketball. And that's very watchable, and I like those Sunday evening games over at Moda. So we'll play Name That Movie. It's brought to you by Lazy Boy. Long live the lazy. And, of course, for all of your ticket needs, simply head on over to trailblazers.com. All right, here we go. Telephone number is 503-248-0620. 503-248-0620. First person, correct answer. What's the name of this movie right here?
Those Green Berets, they're real badasses.
503-248-0620. First person, correct answer. What's the name of that movie? 503-248-0620.
Those Green Berets, they're real badasses.
503-248-0620. First person, correct answer. Name that movie. What is the name of that movie right there? Fire away. Tickets to the Mavericks and Trailblazers on the line. 503-248-0620.
Those Green Berets, they're real badasses.
They certainly are. Especially that particular Green Beret. 503-248-0620. First person, correct answer gets a pair of tickets for the Trailblazers and Mavericks. Now, with the college football playoff rankings that are coming up here shortly on ESPN, I think I kind of know what direction we're headed here for the playoff. Starting with the Big Ten, Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, and Indiana are virtual locks for the playoff, unfortunately. I think Ohio State and Oregon are no-brainers. They are 100% locks regardless of what happens this weekend or in the Big Ten title game. So I think Oregon and Ohio State have basically punched their ticket. Penn State and Indiana are almost in. They need to win this weekend because both their resumes are pretty weak, but that shouldn't be a problem because the Nittany Lions host Maryland and Indiana will host Purdue. So they're almost guaranteed wins. So 4 teams are in from the Big Ten: Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, Indiana. Unless there's more chaos this weekend, the SEC is on track to get 3 teams in. My guess would be Georgia, Tennessee, and either Texas A&M or Texas. I think Bama and Ole Miss played their way out this past weekend with losses to Oklahoma and Florida. They're both 3-loss teams now. So 3 teams in from the SEC. The ACC likely to get 2 teams with Miami and SMU. Clemson does take on South Carolina this weekend, but they need help to get into the ACC title game. And without that title game, Clemson, I think, will get left out, which leaves us with SMU and Miami. Notre Dame will get in provided they beat USC. Boise State will get in as long as they take care of business. They'll be that group of 5 team in. They'll be one of the 5 highest-ranked conference champs. The Big 12 will get 1 team in, either ASU, Iowa State, or BYU. My guess would be Arizona State, but no guarantee because that conference has been stricken with parity. But if if Arizona State and Iowa State both win on Saturday, then they'll meet in the Big 12 championship game. Those 2 teams control their destiny. So that leaves us with 4 teams from the Big 10, Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana, Penn State, 3 teams from the SEC, Georgia, Tennessee, and either Texas or Texas A&M, 1 team from the Big 12, likely Arizona State or BYU or Iowa State. Notre Dame's in, 2 from the ACC, Miami and SMU, and then Boise State. And that puts us at 12. And I think that's how things are going to shake out. And we'll find out more details. Like I said, when the rankings come out tonight, pay attention to what they did with Indiana following the loss to Ohio State. Pay attention to how they deal with the 3-loss SEC teams, particularly Alabama. And wait and see if both Miami and SMU are ranked inside the top 10. I think those are the most important things to pay attention to outside of trying to guess what metrics are going to be most important to the committee this time around because it changes week to week. There's no consistency in how they apply their supposed metrics for how they rank the teams. I'm not even sure they know what they're doing. All right, let's go out to the phones. It is Name That Movie. And I'll play it one more time.
Those Green Berets, they're real badasses.
It's pretty good. Let's go out to John. John, who joins us here on the Rip City Drive. John, are you ready to play Name That Movie?
Absolutely, Chad.
All right, take a listen to this clip, my friend.
Those Green Berets, they're real badasses.
All right, what movie is that?
That's Rambo First Blood.
You are correct, my friend. Nice job.
All right.
Woo!
Sweet.
And out of curiosity, John, how old are you? You're probably in my age range. How old are you?
I'm 52.
Yeah, I'm 49. Yeah. So you're probably like me. The first time we saw Rambo, I was like, whoa, he really is a badass.
Oh, man. Next level, absolutely.
Well, dude, John, happy Thanksgiving, my friend, and congratulations because you'll be hitting Dallas and Portland this weekend at MOTA.
I love it, man. Thanks so much, Chad. Appreciate it, man.
You got it,
go
brother.
Oregon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hey, how do you feel about that rematch? How do you feel about the rematch against Ohio State?
Yeah, it was powerful. There was some interesting moves there at the end, but it was a good game. Great game.
Yeah, no question. All right, we'll put you on hold. John is set. And there you have it. Every Tuesday throughout the entire basketball season, I will have tickets to give away for every Trailblazer game. And all you have to do is listen to me for your chance to win. I think that came up on, I think I saw it on X. Someone had posted something about the movie, and so I was reminded of that clip, which I think is pretty good. And now you get a chance to go see the Mavericks and Trailblazers. And they're playing pretty good basketball. Luka and Kyrie, fun to watch. Like I said last night, Memphis, I like the way they execute and play basketball. They're good. But that's it. Yeah, so there's, 2:57 left in the Michigan State-Memphis game. So we're a good 20. We're probably about 30 minutes away from knowing who the top 4 is going to be because of the way ESPN set it up. I feel like we're getting robbed right now because I want to know what the rankings say. I want to see what they do with the 3-loss SEC teams. But there'll be a lot of teams pulling for USC this weekend because they need Notre Dame to go down. Like I said, you can root against Indiana and Penn State as well. I don't like their resumes, but they're not losing their games this weekend. Penn State takes on Maryland at home, and then Indiana's going to host Purdue, which is one of the worst teams in Division I football. So those are almost guaranteed victories. And then Clemson needs chaos to be able to slip into the ACC title game. And without the ACC title game, I don't think they can get to the playoff. But that's where we're at right now. But like I said, like I mentioned for Oregon, it's great that they're going to finish off the season unbeaten after they beat Washington on Saturday. But now with the playoff, it's different than what it used to be. It's all about securing the bye getting extra rest, getting your guys healthy, and then having to play less games to win a national championship. Because the good thing about being a Duck fan right now, the only acceptable outcome is winning a championship. That's the goal. That's the focus. And they put themselves in great position to do that. And I think the best way to have a path to win a title is to make sure that you're healthy. And playing less games will be helpful, I think. Now, Dan Lanning, I like what he had to say here. First off, in regards to motivation, what do you focus on? Because they've lost 3 straight games to Washington, but that team's totally different than the one that we saw the last couple of years. Michael Penix is gone. They basically turned over the entire roster. So what do you use for motivation? I like this answer.
Again, I think I've said it several times. Motivation's overrated, right? Like, our guys have to want to go out there and execute at a really high level. Since the beginning of the season, we talked about playing our best football at the end of November. Well, we're there, right? So this is our opportunity to go play our best football against a good team.
Yeah, finish the season on a high note and then get reset and ready to roll against Ohio State in the rematch. And that's an important game. Now, the bye week, like I mentioned with Oregon, impressive that they took their first bye after the non-conference play, and then they had 8 straight games. No one else did that in the power conferences, and they won every game. That's tough to do. And now they finally get a bye week and plenty of rest and prep time for Washington. So what did they do to maximize that time? Here's Coach Lanning.
Yeah, first we just started by looking at ourselves, right? Evaluating where the areas that we can improve, what are our strengths, finding ways to be able to lean into those strengths, and then, getting our legs back, getting ourselves back, attacking the weight room. We saw great jumps in our numbers, in the weight room this past week, whether it's our squat power numbers or just our speeds on the field. So I think that those are all positives. We're going to go in this game, playing really fresh at the end.
All right. Big props to Coach Lanning. He and his staff done a heck of a job based on where the team started in that first game against Idaho and the way they're executing now. It took Dylan Gabriel some time to get comfortable with the offense and his new teammates, but he's settled in nicely and is playing big-time football. He'll be an invite to the Downtown Athletic Club for the Heisman Trophy. So he's been great, as I expected. And just overall play. Offensive line's been better. They're winning games at the line of scrimmage with physicality based on the athletes they've been recruiting. And now they're in a position where they can compete for a national championship, truly compete for a national championship. So that way, if you take on a Georgia or a Texas or one of these teams that are big and sturdy at the line of scrimmage, you're not overmatched. And you got a great quarterback. That's why I think they've got a great chance to get Ohio State again. When it comes down to it, I'm going to trust Dylan Gabriel over Will Howard. Nothing against Will Howard. I mean, he seems like a nice guy, but Dylan Gabriel's been in big games at every school he's played at. 3 different schools, big games everywhere, and he's very accurate, very poised, and I think having a guy with that type of experience, Bo Nix type of experience, helps with some of the younger teammates when you're getting geared up for these big games. All right, when we come back, the coach, Mike Holton, will be in studio. It's time for a little Holton on Hoops here on the Rip City Drive. How about that, Coach? We got you a new fancy open. You got to love that.
Oh, man, I'm growing up, man. I'm growing up here. iHeartRadio, Rip City Radio.
All right. Something that's far more important than basketball or anything we have to talk about today is that you have a big announcement, a family announcement. Tell us what is new to the world.
Oh, my first grandson was born today, 11/26/24. Roman Ace Holton.
That is awesome. I just saw a picture, and he is a beautiful grandson.
Oh, man, I just left the hospital, man, and it's so funny. Babies are born, and you just sit there, you just looking at them, I'm like, I got to go.
Dude, that's so awesome. I love the name. Roman is a strong name. That's a great name.
Yeah. And then I asked my daughter-in-law, so help Ace, Ace, Roman Ace Holton. She said, because he's the star of the deck. He's the first. I was like, wow, okay, I like it even more now. She unpacked it like that.
No, I'll never forget it. When my son was born, I was close to my Nana like you were with your grandma, right? And so she came out to be here for his arrival. And right after he was born, they put him in the incubator and, just examine him and make sure. And then I remember me and my Nana went in to look at him in the incubator, and she's looking down in at Isaac, and she looks up at me, and she looks at him. She goes, he looks just like you. And I could see the joy that was on her face to see her great-grandson come into the world. It was pretty sweet.
Oh, yeah, nothing like, becoming a parent or a grandparent or a newborn coming into the world. And, yeah, I was just in the hospital room with my son and daughter-in-law for, 15, 20 minutes. And watching them watch the baby and try to determine which one of them that the baby looks like was just an amazing experience.
Almost everyone I've talked to, including my dad and others, they love being a grandparent. They say it's awesome. So what's the experience been like for you through your eyes as being a grandparent?
Oh, it's hard to put into words. Everybody says it, and until you're a grandparent, it's just phenomenal. And for us, because we're raising our granddaughter, my wife and I, so we're wearing both hats, right? So we're wearing the grandparent hat, but then we're also in the parenting role, which is amazing. And when I came to realize the dichotomy, for lack of a better word, with wearing both of those hats, I realized as a parent, everything is like life or death serious that your kid understands. And you leave this house, you take a shower, you're clean, you go to the doctor, put on clean underwear, right? I mean, you don't respect, don't be disrespectful. Don't you act up. You go to church. You better not make everything is so serious as a parent.
Yeah.
And then you have those teachable moments as a grandparent, and you want to make the point, but you're kind of snickering under your breath because it's not that serious.
Yeah. I love that. No, it's great. And but now you had you have two sons?
I have two sons, a daughter, a granddaughter, and now a grandson.
Wow. I noticed for me, like a little bit different, and I can't imagine what it's like with a granddaughter, but I noticed that it's much harder for me to say no to my daughter when she comes to me for stuff. She's 14, but it's just harder to be stern with a daughter like it is my son.
Yeah, well, because your daughter is you're the man in her life,
yeah,
right? And so you're trying to take care of her, provide, give her a way in which a man or a male should treat her. And so you're trying to, in that frame of thinking, you're there for her a different way.
Yeah.
Your son, you're like, dude, man up. You got to be a provider. You got to be tough. The world's going to be hard. I mean, it's just a different, I think, mindset with a son.
Yeah, no question about it. All right, let's start with this because it seems to be the big issue, and I'm just curious to see where you're going to take this. But the Trailblazers right now, as you know, are facing significant injuries after what took place last night. So we've got multiple guys now who are dealing with issues. Robert Williams III, he played the first half last night, but then did not return to the bench. And we didn't get an immediate report on him, but we found out that he's in the concussion protocol.
Yeah, he hit his head on the floor, and I remember the play. I looked at it, and it was significant. His headband flew off, and it was just kind of, in basketball, you don't have the blue tent like football, so it's not clear right away that they're looking at a potential concussion. And based on how Robert Williams' situation was handled last night, that happens really behind the scenes, and there's no communication until there's communication.
Yeah. Did you ever suffer concussion during your playing days?
I probably did and didn't know it. I mean, they weren't as easily diagnosed or as quickly diagnosed. I mean, have I ever fallen in a game or in practice and hit my head and been a little dizzy? Yes. Was I ever out for a concussion? No.
I always feel weird when I say this, but I was actually happy when I found out it was concussion protocol for Robert, because when he didn't return, I thought, oh, great, he tricked a knee or it's another leg injury. And I didn't want that for him because of what he's been through with his body. So I was happy to hear that it was something not related to his previous leg injuries.
Yeah, and I didn't respond or react at all. I just thought it was odd that he started the game, and then not only did he not start the second half, he didn't return to the bench. So, you're kind of wondering, and with injuries in general, you start thinking about what it means. What's the injury? What does it mean? How long is the player going to be out? Who's going to play in his place? How's the team going to respond? As a broadcaster, I start going down that checklist.
Yes.
Of what are the ramifications of this injury.
Okay. Donovan Klingen's going to be out at least a couple of weeks with a grade 2 MCL sprain. He came back in the game against Houston and played, but then afterwards they did some further testing, and they found the grade 2 sprain of the MCL. Well, what's the ramifications of him missing at least a couple of weeks?
Well, the most obvious one is the challenge in terms of rebounding. Donovan Klingen is a very good rebounder, right? And the team was out-rebounded significantly last night. And that was not alarming to me. It was understandable, given the presence that he has. But then he's also a top of the league in terms of steals and blocks. So what he does on the defensive end, anchoring the defense, that gives perimeter defenders more courage to get into the ball when you've got a shot blocker behind you. And we saw what happened when he was not in the floor in terms of how Memphis was able to get in the lane and make plays and rotate the defense and get on the offensive board. I mean, there were some possessions where Memphis got 2 and 3 shots.
You were talking the other night how, hey, 19 rebounds, no points, 3 blocks. That's a big-time night, but you might want to feed the big fella just a little bit, let him eat some if he's going to work that hard. But what I loved in the locker room after the game, Michael, was as he was talking to Brooke and being interviewed, they all started going crazy. Yeah, 19. Like you could see that they respected the way the rookie's going about his business. I like that.
Well, players appreciate and respect the blue-collar work. And rebounding is kind of considered one of those blue-collar things, right? Lunch pail, hard hat, overalls, go to work, deal with the physicality, bring home the bacon, right? And so that's why players applaud. They're like, man, this dude's 19 rebounds. Because from a player standpoint, and I think 9 of them were offensive. I mean, some huge number, right? So players appreciate, man, he got us extra possessions. He got us out in transition. He's doing, I don't call it the dirty work, but he's doing that valuable work that requires sacrifice and physicality.
Yeah, he's really been terrific. Now, Jeremy Grant, I guess the good news with him, he's got they're calling it a knee sprain, but he's still listed as doubtful for the game tomorrow against Indiana, which means there's a possibility, a slight chance he could play. But if it were more severe, I would think they would just have him listed as out since it's the final game of a road trip. So hopefully he won't miss too much time.
Yeah, I stopped trying to read between the lines of doubtful or questionable, and because A, I don't know what it means, and B, different teams handle it differently.
Yeah.
Some teams, it's gamesmanship, up until they absolutely have to say, thinking that they're going to keep their opponent from preparing and keep you off guard. And then other teams, manage the medical news and information differently for different reasons.
Now, Scoot had a thigh contusion, then he had the rideshare incident, so it was a bit of a back strain. He's questionable. He could play tomorrow. How difficult is it for the team and for Scoot during his development period this year when he's in and out of the lineup, missing a few games with nagging injuries?
I think whenever you have a lack of consistency with your primary ball handlers, it's the pebble in the pond that has a ripple effect on everybody on the roster. When you don't have a quarterbacking type point guard that is getting you into offense, that is setting the table, that's reading mismatches and getting the ball to where it needs to go, well, you start doing that by committee. And the Blazers, I think, do a very good job of it. Denny Avia brings the ball and makes plays. Jeremy Grant can bring it and make plays. Other guys can make plays off the dribble, really. 4, 5, 6 guys can. But you don't have the steady diet of that guy saying, hey, 4 over there. Really that composure that comes with a primary ball handler consistency.
I thought Avia, his last 2 games, I thought he's been terrific. He was one of the bright spots last night. I like his all-around play. He seems to be settling into the bench role a little bit better. What are you seeing from Avia in that role from starter to bench? Is it helping him, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think he's a pro. I think he's a team-first guy, and he's flourishing in the role. He's actually playing better off the bench than he did as a starter. I don't read a whole lot into that.
Yeah.
But there is one thing that we can say is that he's able to sit and watch the game unfold before he comes in, A. B, he's oftentimes playing against backups. C, I think Chauncey's letting him pick his matchups defensively, right? And we saw him guard Sengun. So there's a lot of flexibility that Chauncey Billups has with Denny and versatility that Denny brings that is an asset to the team.
All right, I was watching Memphis last night, and their assist numbers this year are off the charts. They're one of the highest rated offensive teams in the NBA, but they had like 35 assists last night. I think they had 12 assists on their first 14 made field goals. I love that style of basketball, and I love how they have everyone involved. But why is it so difficult for teams like Portland to get more consistency with the player movement and ball movement to where you can have that type of offense? Because when it's run like that, it's like I would want to play in that type of offense.
Well, the energy goes where the focus flows. Where the focus is where your energy is. And I think Memphis and OKC, in my opinion, are the two best teams I've seen this year at just moving the basketball. I mean, just having it as a principle that we move the basketball. And it kind of reminds me, George Karl was the one that kind of put the narrative to it. He said, when you get the ball on offense, shoot it, dribble it, or pass it, but don't hold it. Just don't hold it. And those two teams play that way, with the possible exception of Ja Morant. But Ja Morant doesn't dribble in place. A lot of other teams, and even the Blazers on significant amount of possessions, dribble in place waiting on a screen to come. Well, when you do that, the defense sets. They literally, in my mind, slap the floor and say, okay, let's brace ourselves for this action. And they've practiced how to guard that action and how to react to that action time and time again.
But you're saying when Morant gets the ball and he starts to dribble, he's in attack mode.
Yeah, he's north and south. Ja Morant is a north and south player. He's not a pick and roll guard. He's not waiting for a screen to come, and then he's going to come off and read the defender on the screener and then make a secondary read. Ja Morant is north and south.
All right, we talked about John Wooden. You've had a chance to spend some time around him. But the one guy we haven't talked about yet who you played for at UCLA is Larry Brown. And I've heard from others that talk about how great Larry Brown was. We know about his long success. He crushed my heart when I was younger because he was coaching Kansas with Danny Manning when they beat my Sooners in the championship game, and that devastated me. But what was it like playing for Larry Brown, who's been well-respected for many years?
I think he was the best coach I ever played for, and my high school coach was awesome too. So, but Larry Brown, I thought, was the best at role identification, putting players in roles. And I'll give you a quick story about how it happened with me. I was a freshman at UCLA. We were, I think, 8-6. Curry Kirkpatrick, Sports Illustrated, had did a story on our team after traveling around the country with us for a couple weeks. The Bruins are in ruins. This is arguably the worst basketball team in UCLA history. I mean, it was just like bad. And Larry Brown had come to us from the pros, from Denver, and we had 50 different plays, and we had 20 different defenses. I mean, and as college guys, we couldn't process it all. So I remember him calling me in his office, and he said, look, I'm having a conversation with you because I'm thinking about starting you. He said, and so your role would be to defend and run the team, and I'm going to start you. I'm thinking about starting you at the point guard position. I'm 18 years old. I'm a high school All-American. I'm Southern California Co-Player of the Year. So I'm looking at him like, yeah, okay. And what about the offensive end? He said, no, I need you to defend and run the team. I said, I heard you. What about the offensive end? He said, your role is to defend and run the team. And what I need you to know is we're having this conversation because I'm considering starting you, and the alternative is you don't play. I was like, oh, coach, I can defend and run the team, right? And so we ended up playing for a national championship, not because I ran the team so well, but I think he gave everybody a role. I think he told Rod Foster, you can shoot it. He told Kiki, you can shoot it. And he told me, and this is a quote, I asked him a third time, Coach, what about, good, fine, I'll do it. What about the offensive end? He said, you can shoot if you're wide open or your man falls down. I'm like, I couldn't have been more offended, right? And so it put such a hesitation in my ability to discern what's a good shot and a bad shot. But my point to answer your question is everybody had a role. I knew that if Rod Foster was open or Kiki was open, that I had to get them the ball on time on target, that I could not shoot the ball if they were open.
Is that talent to be able to look at your roster and know what role each guy would be best suited for? Is that just Larry Brown's greatness? How many coaches would struggle with that type of task of being able to identify the specific role for each player?
Well, I played a lot of basketball. I never played for another coach that did it, right? And so I looked at Larry Brown, and then I continued to follow him throughout his coaching journey everywhere he went. When he went to Philly, I went to training camp and watched every minute when he coached Allen Iverson. And I watched him take the ball out of Allen Iverson's hand and put it in Eric Snow's hand because he said, Allen, if you dribble it up and shoot it, nobody else will defend a rebound. We won't have a chance. So he had to convince Allen Iverson that less was more.
Wow. And he probably had the same reaction that you did. Like, initially probably thought you're crazy.
Yeah, but he did it. And he had an incredible fondness and respect for Larry Brown. And Larry Brown did the same thing with Chauncey Billups in Detroit when they won the championship. He coached him into a box, into a role. And so I learned that basketball is a team sport and that coaches oftentimes don't have the courage or the skill to define roles like that.
Yeah.
And it's gotten harder over the years.
So is it just a matter of the coach doing that, like Larry Brown doing that, then the team starts to have success, and then you start to buy in even more because you realize he knows what he's talking about?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's coaching courage, right? It's okay. Look, when I coached at UP, I had Pooh Jeter. I had to do the same thing. Hey,
Pooh Jeter and Donald Wilson were a great tandem at UP with you.
Pooh Jeter he's in the UP Hall of Fame. I took the ball out of his hands. I said, Pooh, when you cross half court, you have to throw the ball to your teammate, free throw line extended, and cut to the weak side. You have to. And we butted heads, and he didn't want to, and he felt that he was most qualified to make a play for himself or others. I said, well, I don't doubt your skill set. But these other guys aren't going to screen and rebound, and we're not going to have a chance as a team if you don't trust them with the basketball. When you catch the ball on the other side of the floor, you do whatever you want.
How much is Pooh enjoying his role with the Trailblazers as an assistant?
Oh, he loves it. He loves it. I remember the first part of the first year, we had a couple of conversations where, he was settling into the player development role. And it was really an awkward conversation because, he was asking me some questions, really about Scoot, because Scoot was assigned to him as a player development coach. And I had to say to him, Pooh, it is not in the best interest of either of our futures if you keep coming to me for that information.
Yeah. I understand that. But that's great. I just love seeing him, grow in that role. Because now he's a man and he's getting a chance to work with guys. I think it's awesome.
Well, Pooh has so much to give. I don't know how much time you've ever spent around him or talked to him or interviewed him, but he is just a special human being that has what I call the gift of humanity. He always cares about the people that are around him in such a way that it is encouraging and inspiring.
One thing I've always wondered, like the Blazers finish up their 5-game road trip tomorrow, Coach. How hard is it when you're you played a bunch of games, you're fatigued, you roll into that final city to end a road trip? How tough is that?
It presents a unique challenge, and even more so with this game being on Thanksgiving Eve. I mean, you're finishing a road trip on Thanksgiving Eve. You're coming home late at night. Thanksgiving's the next day. You've been on the road for 9 days. It's the 5th game. I'm not making an excuse because pros are supposed to punch the clock, and I'm sure they will punch the clock and play hard. But, yeah, it does have a fatigue factor.
Michael Holton on Hoops here in studio. Congratulations on the arrival of your grandson, Roman Holton.
Roman Ace Holton.
Woo! Roman Ace Holton. You got to love it. All right, I will talk to you tomorrow, my friend.
Looking forward to it.
All right, we'll keep things rolling. The new college football playoff rankings are out. I will give those to you next here on the Rip City Drive. All right, the new batch of college football playoff rankings are out. Oregon is number 1. Ohio State's number 2. Texas is 3. Penn State is 4. Notre Dame's 5. Miami's 6. Georgia's 7. Tennessee is 8. SMU 9. And Indiana 10. Indiana's at number 10. There's no question that the losses by Ole Miss, Alabama, and Texas A&M benefited Indiana greatly. They needed chaos to stay alive for the playoff, and they got it because everyone knows they're a fraud. But they're sitting there with one loss. Boise State's 11th, followed by Clemson, Bama, Ole Miss, South Carolina at 15, and Arizona State at 16. So right now, the 4 teams that would get the bye would be Oregon, Texas, Miami, and Boise State. But Pete Futek just confirmed this, and it's what I believe. If Arizona State wins out and they finish 11-2 under Big 12 champs, they're not going to give Boise State one of the 4 byes. It will go to the Big 12 champ with 2 losses. So we'll see how things shake out. So if you're Alabama, you're rooting for chaos. You need either Indiana, Penn State, or Boise State, or Notre Dame to go down. And that's what you're looking for. If not, those teams are screwed. So the original thought process going into the show today, I thought we would have the following. 4 teams in from the Big Ten: Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, and Indiana. Those teams are virtual locks for the CFP because Penn State hosts Maryland and Indiana will host Purdue. And Oregon and Ohio State they're shoo-ins. And then from the ACC, you're going to get 2 teams, Miami and SMU. What you really wanted to pay attention to tonight was, would both those teams be inside the top 10? They are. SMU's 9. Miami is ranked number 6. Those 2 teams will meet in the ACC title game, and they won't penalize either one of those teams for a loss in the conference title game. So you get those two from the ACC. And then from the SEC, you'll get 3 teams: Georgia, Tennessee, Texas, or Texas A&M. 3 teams. And right now, if you look at the rankings, the way it's set up, Georgia's 7, Tennessee 8, and somehow Texas, who has played nobody and has no resume, is number 3. But the other teams, the one team that's got an inside shot at number 20 is A&M, because if they get to the SEC title game, they have a chance to get in as a 3-loss SEC team. But no one expects that to happen. So I think we get 3 teams in from the SEC. We'll get 1 team in from the Big 12. I'm pulling for Arizona State, but it will be one of 3 teams: Arizona State, Iowa State, or BYU. And if those teams win their next 2 games, either one of those teams, they'll get the number 4 seed in the playoff and get a bye. That's how that's going to shake out. Notre Dame, if they beat USC, they're in. And then Boise State, provided they take care of their business, they're in. But Boise State, they got Oregon State this weekend, and then they'll probably have to play UNLV in the conference title game. Like, they're on shaky ground, too, because they haven't played great over the last couple of weeks. So there is some risk there for Boise. I would say the best case scenario, or the 2 games to keep an eye on, or the 2 teams to keep an eye on, if you're Alabama fan or Ole Miss fan, and you're looking for a way to squeeze in, it would be Boise State, who has to finish up against Oregon State, and then their conference title game. If they take a loss, that will knock them out of the ranks. And then, after that, I guess you look at Notre Dame. If they take a loss at USC, they're done. And that's what you have to look for. That's what you have to look to. This last weekend's going to be great. What's the schedule looking like? I'll give you an idea what the schedule's looking like this weekend. It's been like this every week, where you look at the schedule, like, gosh, there's so many great games to watch. So many great games, and so many games with playoff implication. Okay, so Thursday, nothing there. Friday, Oregon State at Boise State. That's a game with playoff implication. 9 o'clock on ABC, Oklahoma State at Colorado. Colorado still has an outside shot to get into the Big 12 title game, but they need help. That loss to Kansas really crushed them. You've got Mississippi State at Ole Miss, 12:30 on ABC. And you've got Georgia Tech at Georgia, 4:30 on ABC. Then on Saturday, Michigan at Ohio State at 9 on Fox. Tennessee at Vanderbilt, 9 a.m. on ABC. South Carolina at Clemson, 9 a.m. on ESPN. And as we work throughout the course of the day, Notre Dame at USC, 12:30 on CBS, 12:30 on ESPN, Miami at Syracuse, 12:30 on ESPN2, California at SMU, 12:30 on ABC, Auburn at Alabama, the Iron Bowl, 12:30 on Fox, Arizona State and Arizona. And let's see if that does it. That's 12 games so far with serious implications. 4 o'clock, FSN or FS1, Purdue at Indiana. 4:30 on NBC, Washington at Oregon. 4:30 on ABC, Texas and Texas A&M. We've got 4:30 on Fox, Kansas State at Iowa State. Houston at BYU, 7:15 on ESPN. I mean, this is awesome. I just counted up 17 games with some type of playoff implication on Friday and Saturday. And this is the final week of the regular season before we get to the conference championship games. Seriously, how great is that? How great is that? This is what the expanded playoff is giving us. More games with more interest, more teams with hope, and you've got multiple fan bases across the country that still are alive for a potential playoff berth in the final weekend of the regular season. It's never been like this before. How great is that? But I'm still telling you, like, you look at these rankings, and it's basically garbage because we all know that there are certain teams that don't necessarily deserve where they're ranked. Texas being one of them. Miami being ahead of Tennessee and Georgia is ridiculous. But what can you do? All right, that's going to do it for us. Big thanks to Michael Shacker.